Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a massive shift happening right now in AI infrastructure. We really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Is traditional cloud architecture actually holding developers back? We're going to break down exactly how Nebius is differentiating its new Neocloud model from the legacy cloud providers you're probably used to, and why this matters so much for the future of artificial intelligence. Consider this idea from OpenAI's Sam Altman. He pointed out that AI compute has become the most vital resource, literally the most precious currency on the planet. But here's the thing. As demand absolutely skyrockets, the banks holding this currency, meaning our legacy cloud infrastructures, well, they're really starting to crack under the pressure. So here is our roadmap for today. We're looking at the compute currency crisis, defining what a neocloud actually is, exploring this whole silicon to API architecture, comparing neoclouds against legacy systems, unpacking the full stack advantage, and finally wrapping up with the future of AI infrastructure. All right, let's jump right into part one, the compute currency crisis, and exactly why legacy clouds are bottlenecking AI. Look, legacy general-purpose clouds simply weren't built to mine this new compute currency. They were built for basic web hosting and traditional enterprise software. If you're an AI founder listening to this, you definitely know the wall I'm talking about. You're fighting tooth and nail for GPU quotas, you're suffering through latency from virtualized cards, and honestly, you're wasting precious engineering weeks just trying to set up your infrastructure. It's a massive headache. Which brings us to part two, defining the neocloud and what they call the infinite loop of compute. This is a total paradigm shift. The name Nebius itself actually perfectly reflects their mission here. It combines nebula, which means cloud, with the Mobius strip, symbolizing infinite possibilities. Pretty clever, right? But listen, Neocloud isn't just some fancy marketing spin. It's a completely distinct technical environment that is engineered specifically for AI developers, all the way from the raw silicon right up to the API. Nebius CEO Arkady Village really hits the nail on the head when he emphasizes that their system isn't adapted from a general-purpose cloud, but designed for what developers actually need. On one side, you have adapted legacy systems. On the other, a ground-up, purpose-built architecture. Think of it like, it's the difference between retrofitting a decades-old gas guzzler with an electric motor versus just building a high-performance EV entirely from scratch. Okay, moving on to part three, silicon to API architecture delivering raw power with no surprises. When we put these environments side by side, the differences are just stark. General-purpose clouds basically force you to manage super complex infrastructure, and they often slice up compute power with virtualized GPUs. And you know what that means? Latency. The AI-native Neocloud, however, uses custom hardware with non-virtualized bare metal GPUs, so you're getting the raw, unadulterated power of the hardware with zero virtualization overhead. Literally no surprises. And here is how that raw power becomes genuinely accessible. Nebius introduced the Aether 3.5 platform with serverless AI, meaning teams can launch workloads almost instantly. You don't have to spend weeks configuring Kubernetes clusters or managing Slur environments anymore. The platform just abstracts all that infrastructure away, letting developers actually focus on, building their models. This architectural difference translates into massive real-world efficiency. Take the physical AI company RoboForce, for example. They used this exact architecture to reduce their AI setup pipeline time by a staggering 70%. That means they shrank their iteration cycles for industrial robots from months down to just mere days. That is a real game changer. All right, let's dive into part four, Neocloud versus legacy clouds, and look at the structural market differentiation. So when we compare Nebius directly to a single-purpose AI hyperscaler like, say, CoreWeave, two completely distinct operational models emerge. CoreWeave operates a capital-hungry, debt-financed model that is strictly focused on GPU compute rental, just renting the hardware. Nebius, conversely, is cash-rich with zero debt, and they offer a diversified, full-stack model. They aren't just a hardware rental service, they're providing a complete ecosystem of developer services and APIs. We can actually hear the advantage of this Neocloud approach directly from the people building on it. Anna Veronica Doragush, the CEO of Recraft, and they build massive generative AI foundation models, points out a major relief. She says they always have GPUs available. No more frustrating delays, waiting for quotas. You aren't fighting with legacy providers just to run a simple experiment. Elliot Andres, the CTO over at PhotoRoom, totally echoes this sentiment. Look, in the AI world, a single training run can easily last for months. If your infrastructure blinks or bottlenecks for even a split second, you lose invaluable time and capital.
Photoroom found that escaping those legacy cloud restrictions meant they could execute multi-month training runs completely seamlessly, without interruption, saving significant engineering time.
And hey, this architecture is absolutely built for immense enterprise scale too. Take the global financial app Revolut. They rely on Nebius for incredibly high-stakes, real-time workloads. They're using the Neocloud to power AI agents that prevent financial crime, handling up to 1.2 million customer support tickets every single month. That is serious reliability right there. Which brings us perfectly to part 5, the full stack advantage. This goes way beyond just renting hardware. What really sets Nebius apart is that they basically own the entire AI lifecycle ecosystem. Yes, you have the core cloud infrastructure, but you also have Toloka acting as a data partner for Gen AI training. You've got Avride deploying autonomous vehicles and delivery robots in partnership with Uber. There's TripleTen, an edtech platform reskilling people for tech careers, plus a stake in ClickHouse for massive open-source database management. It's the whole shebang, a completely holistic approach. To give you a real sense of the sheer computing scale this ecosystem supports, consider Sword Health. They power their Dawn clinical healthcare AI model using over 200 billion parameters, all directly on Nebius infrastructure. Just think about that for a second. Managing 200 billion parameters simultaneously requires a level of network and storage synchronization that standard clouds simply cannot handle. Finally, we arrive at part 6, the future of AI infrastructure, and how we're scaling for the agentic era. As we look toward the horizon, the physical scale and the capital required to run the future of AI is just staggering. And perhaps the absolute greatest validation of this Neocloud model comes from the very top of the food chain. NVIDIA, the exact company manufacturing the compute currency of the future, invested $2 billion into Nebius. They are actively backing them to help build this next generation of hyperscale cloud. Through this deep engineering partnership, Nebius is set to deploy more than 5 gigawatts of data center capacity by the end of 2030. That's using the absolute latest generation of NVIDIA's accelerated computing architectures. We are talking about infrastructure on a scale that literally mimics small national power grids, all dedicated entirely to artificial intelligence. So, as AI shifts from being just a fascinating novelty to the foundational compute currency of our entire future economy, developers and enterprises face a really critical choice. You have to ask yourself, in the era of AI, is your cloud holding your models back? Is adapting a legacy web cloud with its quotas, its complex setups, and that virtualized latency just a losing battle? When the difference between leading the market and falling behind is measured in raw compute and frictionless deployment, the rise of the purpose-built Neocloud might just be the most important infrastructure shift of our decade. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.